Hi, I'm Finnian Kelly. I'm the creator of the Intentionality Philosophy and Lifestyle, and look forward to speaking on the Jesse T Show this week.
Finnian, welcome back, brother.
Thanks so much, Jesse. It's fun to come and continue the story. We can go deeper than we did last time.
We are going to go all the way, brother. We had some great content the first time, your story, your journey, all the things that you've done, the things that you are continuing to do. And I think that we should just start it off. You were talking about you had a 6-hour massage the other day.
Yeah, people are going to be thinking I'm a little bit crazy, but I'm really into body work and I love energy medicine. I've trained in energy medicine. And just a couple of weeks ago, I went to this masseuse. So when I find a body worker who I love, I'll go to them because the quality of an average body worker to an amazing one, it's exponential. So I did a detour to come back from Aspen through Boulder to see my body worker and also my acupuncturist. And this body worker, he was working on me and there was something different about him. I went, what's happened to you? Like, you already were incredible. You've gone to another level. And he shared that he was starting to he's been doing these 5-hour massages with another body worker. And I could see that he was opening up and he was becoming more spiritual. And he said, actually, you'd benefit from that. And you'd like this guy. And I went, all right, I'm going to fly back in a couple of weeks after this Dr. Joe Dispenza retreat. And I'm going to have this experience. So last night, dropped in there and this cool guy called Sam and went on it was meant to be 5 hours. We went for 6 hours. And we actually we could have gone for another 6 hours if it wasn't midnight already. We got into this trance state and it was just be able to get into parts of my body that I didn't realize, layer of layer, and just releasing trauma, releasing negative energy that I don't need anymore, and just opening me up. It was remarkable and I'm hooked. I'll never go back.
I'm already sold. Like my longest massage I've done was about, 90 minutes to 2 hours. And even in 90 minutes to 2 hours, you still feel like there's more on the table. But I'm assuming that, like anything else, any kind of spiritual work or energy work or just intentionality that you put into something like that, there's a transformation probably as you go further. So walk us through a little bit, the first couple hours, and then like how did it start to manifest for you in terms of some of this healing and some of these insights that you were downloading?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that you brought in the intentionality there. So many people they'll hear this and like, I've got to go have a 6-hour massage. And yeah, it will do some value to you. But if you don't come in there with intentionality and have some pre-integration and post-integration, then it won't work for you. So I already had one of the most spiritual days of my life yesterday. So I shared with you that I just sold a business last week. And this business was more than just a business. It was the last chord to a previous life of mine. I talk about a chord. We have these emotional chords that we allow ourselves to be connected with other entities, with people. And this symbolized an end to that chapter. So it was a very big emotional release. And I went back to a place where I used to live, which is called the Star House. This is one of the most beautiful and remarkable sacred temples in the world, really. And it's in Boulder, Colorado. And I was lucky enough to live there for all of last year. And it was Mother's Day. So I wanted to go back and celebrate the Star House, which is the mother of the land and the all. And I had a 4-hour meditation there and it was just delightful and just reliving the energy. So I was coming in there with a lot of intention. So I dropped into the meditation. And the first is you have to get over yourself. Like the thought of 5 hours plus, if you start thinking about that, you're already in trouble. Yep. So I just really started getting calm, relaxing into my breath and just going into, all right, I'm going on a trance-like journey. I did 5-hour meditations with Dr. Dispenza. I can do this as well. So let's get into a nice, beautiful state. And I connected with the energy worker and just started letting it open. And the first hour, it was just like a normal massage. And then something happened. I just went into trance. And I remember being 3.5 hours in, I was like, where did that 2.5 hours go? That was amazing. And he's getting into parts and I could feel like trauma release just coming. And I shared that there was this cord that needed to be effectively, even though the cord was cut, the attachment to me was still there and it needed to be processed. And we were getting into my stomach region and just releasing it. And I had moments of tears, I had moments of laughter. It was remarkable.
That's beautiful, brother. Yeah, that's The body does keep the score. The body
Hmm.
does store energy. And so there's a lot of people that have like cricks in their neck or different parts of pain. And a lot of times it can lead to dis-ease, which becomes disease. And people
It
don't
is.
realize how powerful that is. And something is you would think as simple as like massage or just like working out the kinks, but the intentionality, the focus, the even the ceremonial kind of aspect of it, of like just really doing some work to heal, it can make all the difference. And so you mentioned energy. Was this energy work, or was he like disciplined or skilled in like Reiki, or like what kind of stuff was he proficient in?
So he's hands-on healing, deep massage, but understanding that we really are just energy. We all have these energetic fields, and this whole concept of when it's in our body, it's actually already been in the field for a long time. So what ends up in the field ends up in matter in ourselves. So this is the problem with modern day medicine. It's all about treating matter to matter. It's about let's
Yes.
treat the symptom rather than the actual cause. And that's why when you can get the cancer out of you, but then if you don't treat the actual cause of it, which is these energetic imbalances, it will just come back. So we've
Yes.
always got to be treating the field. And I always like to say, like, it needs to be healed in the field first, and then you'll focus on it. So when we're doing this work, he's working with me, but at the same time we're doing some talk therapy to release. So like understanding that if we have this connection to our emotions and then we work through the energy, we can start moving it back. And the whole idea of emotion is that it's meant to be energy in motion, emotion.
Love
And
it.
unfortunately, a lot of the time, the energy stops being in motion. So it just stays in us. And that's where it actually forms into some form of injury, disease, or negative energy. So this was a very intuitive sense of releasing. And I think that's another part of it is we all have this innate knowledge of how to use energy within us. But we've come addicted with the intellect to train ourselves. We have to get a qualification in Reiki or a qualification in breathwork or something. It's like, I know this guy, he's intuitive. I don't need to know anything of his training. I know how he knows how to move energy because I know how to move energy. And that's the wonder of it.
I love it, brother. Yeah, yeah. And there's so many things that are coming up for me there, and just conversation wise. What were the energy practices that you learned through the years that you really, and even that you're trained in, that you utilize either for yourself or other people?
Mm-hmm. So I love the idea of stacking things into play. So one of these by themselves add lots of value, but when we stack modalities, we can get really great transformational results. And I have this awesome intentional living guide on my website, which we can share on a link, which it goes through my different stacks that I use to be able to get transformation in my body. So in the simplest form, I like to think of movement. That's one great way of energy release. If you look at young children, what do? They bounce around, they shake because they have an intuitive knowledge that energy is meant to be flowing out of us at all time.
Yes.
And then
Yes.
what do? We tell them to stop moving. And that's where a lot of our problems start, is just a simple act of the parent. So naturally, first thing in the morning, I just like to move a little bit, shake my body. I use Qigong or yoga, or just sometimes just bouncing is just incredibly powerful.
Yes.
The breath is another modality. When we use our breath, we get into a regulated state. We can get into more heart and brain coherence where we're actually working together. We lower our beta waves down into an alpha wave state, and potentially we can even get into the ideal, the magic place, into delta, and that is a natural healing process as well.
No question.
Then yeah, so breath, I know you love breath. Then some form of like cold showers is another energy release. So we get in there, hyper moves everything going in our body, and we start getting energy flowing through. So any of these places, meditation, I'm an emotional clearing facilitator, so I use that as a process. And it's just about getting them moving, getting them, opening the door to the subconscious into the conscious, and allowing them to flow out.
I love it, brother. You're talking about all the stuff I geek out on, man. And we had a transformational weekend that we had 16 people come from all around the country in Hawaii to come hang out with us for the weekend to do some healing, to do some growth, and make some connections. And we used a lot of those same modalities, man. So from holotropic breath work to other exercises that were more like emotional, like see and be seen, or holding space for people. And then I led an ecstatic dance that was an hour long, but it took 2 hours. It was, no one wanted to leave. It was just beautiful. And all we were doing was just dancing and playing and having a great time. My calves were sore for like a week. And then, I was doing in the morning, you mentioned Qigong, which energy practice, and just people don't realize the power that like qigong can have if you do it, every day for 100 days and you consistently work. And there's all these different things happening in the body and emotionally that you're removing energy, you're bringing good energy in. I mean, there's all these things that people can do, and a lot of them are free. I mean, you own your breath, you own your body,
We intuitively, the intelligence that created us gave us everything we need inside ourselves. We've got to stop looking external and come back internal and know, like, this whole idea that you need to be taught something or you need to go through a program, that's all just conditioning. Yes. You have it inside of you. And I loved what you said about how the ecstatic dance was 1 hour and people didn't want to leave for 2 hours, because once you get a taste of this, you do not want to stop. Right. You start feeling so good. You start feeling so connected in life. I shared to you just before that I am feeling more peace, joy, and love than I've ever felt before. And it's not from any outside recognition. It's because I've got in touch with myself. I'm aligned, I'm on my path, and it feels wonderful. So now that whole concept of I have to meditate, I don't have to meditate. I get to meditate. I want to drop in and have 2-hour experiences. Give me 4, give me 6. This massage, I could have gone for 12 hours because it just feels so amazing. So that's what I want to inspire people to do is, yes, at the start, there's going to be some resistance because your ego, your programs, your faulty programs, you're going to come up against them and it's going to feel uncomfortable, but push through that. And then you go into this other place of magic, of beauty, of love. It's liberating.
And you get a lot of information too, information about your body, information about your soul and your emotions. And, a lot of times when you do even just breath work without any kind of substance, it's just utilizing your own God-given breath. You can enter into different states that allow for emotional healing. It allows for information to come to you. And I could tell you a couple of the most impactful times I've ever worked with breath work have been life-changing. It's been, insightful because I work with plant medicines, and that's a substance, it's a natural tool, but you don't need those things. You can utilize those things in conjunction with, but everything else that we just mentioned is natural and free. And so in a segue and thinking about meditation, you talked about Dr. Joe Dispenza. What did you do with that recently, and talk about that journey?
Yeah, so I think it's actually quite funny. The last time I spoke to you, I just got back from my first 7-day retreat with him. And then this time we did a advanced follow-up retreat. So it was everyone who had participated in one of his week-long retreats were there. So the container was amazing because everyone, it wasn't like seekers. These people have showed up. They've had to do the work multiple times, and it was incredible. So we just did 4 days together, and it was very similar, but just deeper. Everything was a little bit longer. And this time it was all about time travel. This idea that you can actually, if you go through into the 5D world, you're in a place where time is eternal. It's the continuous present now. And you move through space by moving through time. So time travel and connecting to this divine. So it's pretty remarkable when you hear about it and you're like, what is this guy going to be talking about? But once you get into it and you start experiencing this, because this is the whole idea, is that we need to experience first, not just having theoretical logic. It's one of the great things that the Buddha said, is that always take your own experience over any of my doctrine. Even if I've said this, take your own personal experience. And that's what I want to empower more people, is like, have your own experiences. So we were doing waking up going to bed at sort of 1 in the morning, waking up at 3:30, going into big pineal gland meditations for sort of 4 hours, then walking meditations on the beach. And it was very transformative. What was amazing for me was this time, we always have more trauma, but this time I didn't feel like there was some deep trauma that I needed to bring up. It was more getting into this place of just peace and joy and love, which was refreshing as well.
Beautiful, brother. Was there any, I've heard of his kaleidoscope meditation. Did he do that there as well?
Yeah, he did. So the kaleidoscope meditation is where you get into a trance. So you get into a place first, and then you open up your eyes, and then there's just this wonderful kaleidoscope on a big screen, and you're just locking in trance. And it's a way to be able to help you get into this delta state. And then you can start, delta waves is a place where your body naturally heals. And Jamie Wheal is talking about this a lot right now in his new book, which is awesome. And then you can feel great, but you also have this place, this connection to the unseen, the quantum world, and you can start manifesting really powerfully. And you can also start time traveling and having experiences with divine beings.
That's interesting, man. I know I've had some experiences, and I've recently traveled through the cosmos, saw my soul's journey. I was in Peru about a month and a half ago, And one of my buddies that I was with, he was going to go stay for like another couple of weeks before he came back for our thing. And he was going to go meet who we affectionately called the timekeeper. Like there's someone down there that he was going to connect with that was going to effectively teach him like how to manipulate time and be able to. It sounds crazy to people that don't understand this, but it's like it's really powerful. And he didn't actually have a chance to meet him. He ended up going to like Lake Titicaca, and he was staying with some Kiros, and he brought back. He was kind of trained and leading a despacho, which he did in our transformational weekend. So he did have some great insights, but we're still looking to connect with a timekeeper. So if you have any knowledge that comes to you in the next, little bit about time travel, time anything, I'm in. I want to hear about it.
Yeah. Well, we actually have seen this. We've all had experiences of this where we've got connected into like a dream state. We've started visualizing, and then something just suddenly comes to us. It's very similar to what happens at Burning Man, where that saying, the player always provides. And what it is because we're out of high beta state, where it's just all analytical intellect working. We get into this place, we lower ourselves down, we start accessing a place in the 5D, the quantum world, where everything is energy. And if the time is eternal, that means we can actually operate there, and it flows down into the 3D world a lot quicker. So the whole idea is just get into this manifesting state, get into a place where you're in heart coherence, heart and brain together, start feeling self that there's no time, no place, getting rid of the constructs of our normal world, and then start attracting it. You'll start finding that everything happens quicker. So I'm actually in a place right now where I've committed, I'm not going to work hard anymore. I'm not going to operate in this matter to matter world. I'm going to spend more time meditating, visualizing, creating through this way, and then allow it to come to me, allowing it. Now, it doesn't mean I'm going to be passive. I'm still going to take the action, the activity that needs to happen in order to occur, but I'm not going to try to do it by working harder or faster or anything like that. I'm just going to allow the universe to provide for me. So that's a new experiment that I'm going to be doing. That's
beautiful. The universe will conspire in your favor if you're doing all the things that you need to do to show up for yourself and other people. And we talk about this quantum field and quantum world. And on the last day of our transformational weekend, so there were three of us, Tori, myself, and Lane, facilitating the weekend. But I did get to partake as a participant a bunch through the weekend, which was beautiful. And a few days I had gone on a deep journey with psilocybin. And one of my things was to find out what my superpower was. I wanted to know what my superpower was. Because when you start working with this medicine, a lot of times it's to heal things. But like once you kind of get to a point, it's like you can kind of start curating and crafting your life, and you can call into reality. It sounds crazy, but you can really call into reality whatever you intend. So that intention. And so I was like, I want to be shown my superpower. This was on a Wednesday. And then by Sunday, I'm in this quantum healing ceremony with this guy named Isaac. Isaac is a 20-year, engineer, graduated Georgia Tech, really sharp guy, but he's been working with like ayahuasca for 20 years. And he's just really tapped into that side as well. And so he's created this, for lack of better terms, like a playlist, a set of songs that would have like healing tones that are embedded into the music. And I'm laying there on the floor, like, heart open, hands open, just ready to receive, with no expectation. Like I honestly didn't even know what he was going to do either. Like I was going in there with brand new eyes, like no idea what was going to happen. And I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I'm just overwhelmed with emotion. And I just start bawling my eyes out, and tears are running down my face. And I'm like, like ugly cry. And like the guy next to me puts his hand on my shoulder as we're laying down to console me. And what happened was I saw all my life's trauma in like one clip. I saw being bullied. I saw coming from a dad that was a junkie for 30 years. I saw, holding my daughter till she died, my mom till she died, like all these profound life-changing events that have made me actually a very grateful human being. And when I realized I saw all that, I realized what my superpower was. So my superpower was to go through those events, to learn how to heal myself so that I could turn around and heal other people and teach them how to walk through seasons of life, because I've seen a lot of life in a short amount of time. And it was just really beautiful because I woke up, and this is the crazy part. And I sat up, and when you do breath work, your hands and your feet can get charged. Like they could either get numb or they could feel like there's a lot of energy. I sat up and just started chanting from things that I experienced from like San Pedro and ayahuasca, like teaching me that I'm a healer and I'm a creator. And I just started chanting some of these things. And I'm like, I know what I have to do for the rest of my life. Like I know my superpower is to lead people on this journey to come back healed, all of us together. It was fucking incredible.
I love it. And it's so beautiful. And this is the moment when you realize you're on the really great path of healing. Is one day you wake up, and rather than resisting all the trauma, you go, I now understand why I had to go through all that trauma. because it was for this moment,
Yes. Yes.
where now suddenly I realize the power that I have with myself, that I'm a creator, I'm a healer. And ultimately, what you just described is really most humans' path, if they allowed it. Like, that's what we need to get to, is a place to be healed so we can heal others, serve others. That's a beautiful trait, and we all have it. So I'm so glad you've had that realization, and you already are healing so many people, and you're going to be able to impact a lot of people, and that's what's wonderful.
It's a beautiful journey, brother. And I want to get back to a really important part of, you said cutting the cord, and I want to kind of talk about what that feels like. But what was the business that you exited from, and talk about like kind of that season of building that and what you've done and created, what it's done for you. But then also now you're on the other side of it and you've cut the cord. Where are you at with that now?
Okay, so I just exited a company I had in Australia called Wealth Enhancers, which is a financial advice and coaching company for millennials. And it was an incredible company. We were ahead of the time. We disrupted the industry. We changed the industry really progressively, and we had a lot of success along the way. However, it was a business I had with my ex-wife, and when we separated, we pretty much, I believe most relationships break up because trauma from the past comes to fruition. Sure. And that plays out, and we don't know how to address it, and we start focusing on the present when actually it's the past is coming and interfering. So we played out a lot of trauma in our relationship, and effectively this business became, almost think of it as like our child. That we ended up playing out this drama, and I believe now, so we didn't do this to our own children in the future. We were very blessed to have a business to play this out, not an actual living entity. And it didn't end up nice for me. It was a 4-year process where I knew I needed to get out early, but I was wanting to stay some form of connection. And when we are not in line with our soul, when we're not walking our path, the soul doesn't punish you. It will just do things, and the universe will do this to make you pay attention. So opportunities would arise, and then they would fall away. And I then would focus on working harder to try to fix it. And I worked harder the last couple of years than I've ever worked. I'm not someone who has to work that hard. Things just naturally come. Now, this doesn't mean I don't do activity, but it's that feeling of trying and striving. And no matter what I did, more things just kept going wrong, because the soul was waking me up and said, you have a different path now. You need to move through it. So eventually I had the courage to exit it. And I realized it was about this chapter of my life. And it wasn't just about the relationship. It was a version of myself that I'd been creating from a very young age. From when I first experienced the trauma, I split a part of myself. I created separation, created multiple parts of myself. And I created this version of Finn that I was going to be. And I did get there, and it didn't fulfill that much. But even though rationally I knew that I was better off in this new path and I needed to not leave, subconsciously, there was still code of this previous Finn in there. And I realized, I need to grieve this version of Finn. Like, I effectively need to see that he's died and move through it. That's where I'm at right now.
Wow.
I'm in that place right now and that's part of the reason for the 6-hour massage. I'm going to go do a ceremony in the desert, and I'm releasing that part of myself so I can step into my new. So it's been wild. I'm so proud of myself. Like, I was in the kiva of this spiritual temple yesterday, and it's dark. And I suddenly reflected on the 4-year journey I had, and just waves of just emotion started flying out of me. And I was just like, wow, that was long and that was tough, but I did it and I faced it. And I had so much love for this younger version of myself, which I actually didn't have. I was feeling a lot of resentment to or disappointment. I just went, wow, you just kept showing up each day, even though it was challenging, you just kept showing up. And that's all I can ask for myself. And that's why I'm feeling so much peace and joy and love and freedom right now, because I've liberated myself from this version of myself. It wasn't anyone else. It was actually my creation, and I needed to release myself.
That's beautiful, brother. That's so powerful. And it's impactful. And I want to know, what was the version of the Finn that you created, that you embodied for a while, that you learned no longer serves you? Like, talk a little bit about like this archetype that you created.
So it's interesting. So I'm here. I'm the intentionality guy. That's what my life's about. And that's now where I'm stepping into. It's my life's work. And that's already confronting, because I don't say life's work, because then I have the chance to be abandoned. That was my trigger. I'd always just sort of be semi in things. And my version of the self was, even though I was intentional, it was still coming from a place of lack. It was coming from a place of trauma, scarcity. So I was living an intentional life and doing great things, but the origin, the root of it was still that I wasn't worthy enough. That's why I kept getting abandoned. And I would keep creating these situations in my life to keep getting abandoned, because effectively I needed to
self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah, exactly. And you can't, no one else can abandon you, only you can abandon yourself. And that's the lesson that I needed to learn. So that was the version where it was this version of like living in the future, strategizing, always thinking about how do I look after myself, because I can't depend on other people? How do I create? How do I have huge impact? Because then if maybe I do that, then I'll feel better about myself. But it was still very external focused, even though it was coming from a very good place and I was doing good work. And this is where it's danger. Sometimes we're worshiping people who still have a lot of trauma in themselves because it's socially accepted the work they're doing. They're out there saving the world, but they're still coming from a limited place. Yes. And that's what I was doing. So it could be disguised, just like addicts. Like you can be disguised if you're a fitness addict because that's socially accepted, but it's the same thing. You're an addict. You're running away from something because you don't want to deal with the present self. So that's a danger where the ego can really put you in a little situation where it's suddenly you're okay for other people, but you know you're not okay in yourself. So I had to grieve this version, and it was a beautiful, courageous, inspiring version, but it was still not fully in love with himself. And that's who I'm stepping into. And externally, I still want to have great relationships. I want to have impact. I want to do those things, but I don't need any of them. As long as I'm feeling content with myself and I'm being a good human being and I'm connected to my soul and my spirit, then that's good. And I believe by doing that, I'm going to have a great impact anyway.
Of course, brother. You're in alignment and you're being intentional. Mm-hmm. Words we keep using over and over again. But you mentioned the word or the sentence, the idea of loving yourself. And I've read the book or listened to the audiobook, Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It. And I don't know, have you heard of this book?
Yeah, I have.
It's beautiful, beautiful book. Short, quick, talks about a little bit of meditation practices and how to create the life that you want just by loving yourself. And this book has found me again recently, and it's also in conjunction with a buddy of mine who's going through some really hard times as he's exiting a military career and dealing with a lot of like PTSD and different things he's working on. And so I committed to him that we would listen to this book together and do the practices and all this stuff. And so, back on April 21st, I wrote out this, I love you thing that it's talked about in the book. And for me, it came from a place where, the subconscious mind has anywhere from 60 to 90,000 thoughts, or the mind in general every day. And one of those thoughts for me a while back was I called myself a motherfucker. And I was like, all right, why the hell did I just call myself a motherfucker? And it was something so trivial, something so small. And I was like, I would never take that from another human being. I wouldn't allow someone to call me motherfucker and like still be in their presence. Like they say it once, okay, maybe like we can, apologize, work past it. But if they continue to call me motherfucker, they're out. Like they're not in my life anymore. But I'm the one who's continually doing that. And I'm like, why am I doing this? And so just doing some subconscious training and learning and some healing. And then this book has come back around in a beautiful timing. But loving yourself has to come first. And it's not selfish at all. It allows you to show up for yourself. And then you can show up for the rest of the world. Because if you're coming from a place of hurt, a place of lack, a place of trauma, you have somewhat of a cup that's not completely full, and you can't keep pouring from an empty cup.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're so right. So it's not selfish because, as I said before, your relationships are always limited by your level of self-love for yourself. It's always going to play out there. Now, this isn't about the modern day movement of like becoming obsessed with self. It's not. It's actually becoming obsessed with the entirety, with we, because when you love yourself, you realize you're a divine being and you're the same as everyone else, and we're all connected. And it's incredibly liberating and powerful. So yesterday, when I was in this kiva, I was down in the depth, and I had that experience of connecting with myself and having love for this other person. I realized, wow, I'm always here with myself. This person who I've been criticizing is always there. It's the only person in my life who is there with me at all times. He just keeps showing up. So why am I loving that person so much? Like that incredible, like even when I swear at it, when I hurt it, when I abuse it with substances, when I do all these different things, it just keeps on showing up. You talk about why do we love dogs so much? Because that unconditional love. You're there. Like, be your own dog. Like, it can be amazing. Like, it's always there. So let's treat it with some love and respect.
Yeah, dude. It's funny you say that. I've used that idea before in terms of like when you go home to your dog and you haven't seen your dog for a little while, the happiness and joy that little being is just because you're around. And it's funny because I went out this weekend and I was kind of out and about with a friend, and we walked into a record store to kind of step back into time. And the guy that owned the record store had a puppy, and he was sitting there and he's like, I just want to be the guy that my dog thinks I am. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so there's just this weird interplay of like dogs, how much they love you, and love yourself like your dog loves you. Like your dog thinks you're the greatest thing ever, right? And it's empowering to know that a lot of these things we're talking about today come from the self, come from the things that you can work, from breath work to energy to healing trauma to loving yourself. And then that just, like you said, allows you to show up for the collective, because we are all part of the same being. We're all part of a massive awareness, a collectiveness. We're all divine beings. We're not gods, but we have divinity within us. And for us to look into another person's eyes and not see ourselves, that's scary. Because if you've ever done an exercise like soul gazing or see and be seen, immediately you start to connect with people on a level that like should always be there. And knowing that you see a piece of you in me and vice versa. And so I think that's beautiful. Talk about your journey that you just mentioned real quick, going into the desert. What is that going to entail?
So the desert, I love the desert. Something awakens in me every time I'm there. It's the earth. It's that place where you can just connect and just drop into Mother Nature and the beautiful wisdom. And just that one of those modalities I didn't mention before about moving energy is grounding. So where there's an electromagnetic field, which we are part of, we are not separate from Earth. We are part of Earth, even though in the modern day world, we've created all these barriers with like insulated shoes and living in these structures, but we need to be connected to Earth. And it's like an electric circuit. You always need a grounding circuit. Otherwise the energy builds up and it short circuits and it blows up. That's effectively what's happening with us. This is where most stresses and illnesses are through. We're meant to be releasing energy, but they're not. They're built up within us, and then it starts short circuiting. It's why when you get frazzled, you say, even we know these words, I get frazzled. That's what we actually do. You are frazzling yourself. You're firing energy into your body and it's not being released. So the simplest way is just to get into the earth again. Stand on earth, lie down. Last night I was literally 6 feet under the earth there, just lying the ground, and just energy was just releasing out of me. So the desert is part of that. And I often, with an intentional ceremony, I'll likely use psilocybin, and I'll be there and I'll do breath work, getting into a very deep meditative state. And then I'll have some psilocybin and just become one with earth. And just, whenever I use transitions in my life, I really like to symbolize the transition. That whole idea of the body keeps the score.
Yes.
This is because we're not releasing it. Yep. So that's part of the reason why I have the 6-hour massage. It's going into the desert, and I'm like, anything that is there that needs to come out of me, come out, like take it out of me. So then the body isn't keeping the score anymore in a particular area. And I'm going to I'll have a fire and I'll do some burning to symbolize the end of the business. I'm also going to the cord. It sounds weird, but I'm going to like get some food or something like that, some rich, deep food, and then dig a hole and honor the earth with this release of me. Like it's almost placenta. That's how I've been coming to my head, is like, I need to get to release it. And that's something which they used to do with placentas. They would gift it back to Mother Nature, back to life, to continue that circular flow.
Circle of life, man. And for you, just you're hitting on all the things that I love to do, from getting 15 to 20 minutes of direct sunlight every day at minimum, and all the health benefits that has, but then the grounding. And like, if you want to, you say stack modalities, you can go work out with your shoes off on the ground and get some sun and some fresh air, and you're literally like taking care of like a ton of like your health and wellness just in like that 30 minutes. And it's incredible that most people don't see it that way. And the world has been really kind of forced to kind of look at themselves. And a lot of times with Corona specifically in the last, year or so, the movement's been like, go inside, don't come outside. And like, it's like, whether it's, people, that are conspiracy theorists and they believe in certain things. It's like, the cabal is like teaching us to like, be subservient, whatever, but we have the power. We have the power to take back control of our health and our mindfulness and our spirituality. And I love that you're doing all these things, and you're just what we call a vortex of light. You're your own vortex, you're your own powerful energy source, and you're emitting it back to the world. And it's important. People need to hear these things. And I think that what you're doing in these modalities and the way that you're living your life is a way for people to step back into alignment with themselves.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. It means a lot to hear that. And everything I share is just something that I've discovered that works for me. And that's why I like to share it, is that life is easier when you have some signposts, and here are just some signposts of how to do it. And even my intentionality philosophy, it has 7 principles, it has 35 behaviors, it has all these tools. But once again, just like the Buddha, don't take this as doctrine, like experience this for yourself and see what works. That's going to be more powerful than ever. It's great to have spiritual teachers and different people you go to, but if at any point you start feeling like you can't do this without them, there's an unhealthiness in that relationship. You've created a dependency, and you've lost touch with what really that spiritual teacher should be opening you up to, is realize that you have everything inside of you, all the divine. But if we've gone a little bit too far off track, sometimes you need someone to just help you come back in alignment, and then you can go with yourself again.
So with this, and agreed, yeah, the gurus, right, and the ones that are truly gurus, a lot of times don't consider themselves gurus. They won't slap it on their business card saying, Tony Guru. A lot of times they shy away from that because they know the negative side to it, and the codependency of those that continue to follow them. And just, you could be your own guru, you could be your own leader and mentor. And yes, it is good to have coaches and people to surround yourself with that are ahead of you to kind of guide you. But at the end of the day, personal sovereignty is where it's at, and like, you control that. And it's beautiful. So thinking about this journey into the desert, there's so many things that you're going to be doing, but I want to tap into one of my favorites is plant medicines. And for me, over the last 14 months that I've been working with plant medicines, and things from psilocybin predominantly to combo to ayahuasca, San Pedro, and they all have their needs and their own insights. For me, no question, I've done so much like generational healing, trauma work, ego work, beautiful insights from business to relationships, through the use of psilocybin. How impactful either that modality, not specifically just like, there's more than plant medicines, but speaking to psilocybin, how impactful has that been for you, and or other plant medicines you've, experienced?
So I'd like to start with, because there's a big movement into psychedelics, and it's awesome. Plant medicines, it's great. It's just another tool, though.
Yes,
that's really important, and we have this ability in ourselves, but sometimes it's handy to have something which can accelerate the process and speed us up, and sometimes get us out of the intellect and get us into the body. And that's what I love about plant medicines. They're a great way to rewire a operating system that isn't working really great for you. So that's why I love it. Psilocybin, I have a really great intuitive relationship with psilocybin. I can speak to the plant. I can feel it. Like when I'm having a journey, it's often a 6-month journey, because it's 6 months of building up and having a relationship with it and identifying. And it was, what was funny, sometimes it speaks to me and says, you don't need this. So last year,
yes,
after a dispenser retreat, I do an annual birthday pilgrimage every year. And I went to the desert again. I went into Zion, and I had about 2 weeks by myself, and I was living there, and I was symbolizing it with a really big journey. This one plant that I'd had a relationship with for a year, this one beautiful mushroom. And I had found the spot, everything. It was just all perfect. And then the day came, and I arrived, and I sat down there, and I was starting to get into this heartfelt place, and my heart was just opening and expanding, and it literally just like ripped open to another level. And it just came a message, is like, you've just done it. You don't need this. And a younger version of myself would have overrided that.
Yes.
It would have gone, nope, you're going to go and you're going to force this. You'd attach to this, you need it. But in that intuitive sense, I was like, I don't need that now. And that was a lesson of one time with ayahuasca. I got offered a second cup, and I stood up, and then I was like, no, you don't need this. I stood back down, and then I overrided myself and went up and got this cup. And that was a very challenging experience that night, because I got a lesson on don't chase, don't
overdo it.
Let go of that ego. So that's how I like to have a relationship with plant medicine, is intuitively go, is this right for me? Have I created the right container? Have I been doing the work beforehand? Have I got something that I want to integrate and to symbolize it in that form of ritual? So it's just, I really emphasize that because people are just jumping on things for experiences, and
Yes.
experiences aren't really worth that much. Transformations are what matter. And how you get a transformation is you have an experience with intentionality.
Love it, brother. I absolutely love it. And I was thinking about my journey to Peru and how the one time I did overdo it, I paid for it. And so I sat with San Pedro. Have you ever worked with San Pedro before?
Yeah, I did. I actually facilitated a beautiful session with one of my best friends before we hiked the Inca Trail 2 years ago, and
Beautiful.
it was bit of yeah, it was amazing. Big heart opener.
Big heart opener, massive grounding, massive purpose, massive downloads. One of my intentions for the Peru trip was to spend time with my daughter who died when she was 7 days old, and then to spend time with my mom and my dad who had passed, and just to connect with their spirits. And it absolutely happened. I sat with my daughter for 2 hours, and it was not a physical embodiment. I wasn't looking at her, but it was her soul and her spirit. And the same thing for my mom and my dad. It was so beautiful and profound. And what I learned from that experience was that they're always with me. It's not something where I have to go seeking them, searching them. They're just already in my soul. They're already with me. And so like, it was just this beautiful learning. But later in the day, I got offered a second cup, and I was the only one that took it. And it was just like, oh, it just seems right. Like, it wasn't an ego thing. I wasn't trying to prove anything. I was like, yeah, I'll just do a second cup. Holy shit. Like, it turned from the most beautiful day in the world ever to like freaky deaky, like to the point where anybody who's worked with plant medicines, certain kinds can allow you to tap into different places and different spirits. And I, no question, was visited by an evil entity that evening. And so much so that I had the people that were kind of running the retreat come and like cleanse my energy, like get the condor feather, get the flower water, like say some shit and like get that thing away from me, because I'm pretty sure it was like a really bad energy. And what happened after it started coming over me that was something wrong, like no shit. And people will tell you that we're there, like the actual atmosphere changed too. Like it went from like kind of overcast sunny to like looking like it was going to downpour rain. The dogs that were always, there was like 3 dogs there, and they were always up with with me. They were playing with me. They were like laying with me when I'd be like, cause San Pedro gets you on the ground a lot, at least from my experience. And so the dogs were like laying with me. All of a sudden they were like barking at me, didn't recognize me. Like there was something going on. And so I went up to my room to kind of just like rest it off, so to speak. And it just kept on getting heavier and heavier and more ominous. And I'm like, shit, I need some help. And so that to say, whenever you feel like you're working with these modalities, plant medicines or whatever, like know your limits, work with people that are trained in these sort of facilitator experiences, and don't overdo it. Don't just do it just to try to be a hero, right? Like don't do the hero's journey because you want to be a hero, because you're going to learn some shit you probably don't want to learn.
I'm so glad you shared that. And this is why I love personal vulnerability. You give people insight. So there's a trend right now where we think, like, there's a story out there that psychedelics is good for everyone. And it's actually not. So they've now got evidence. If you're a sociopath, psychopath, or anything like that, giving more psychedelics just makes you worse. Yep. It just makes you more in that, because it actually just creates more of what you have in you. So if you have love in you, then it creates more love in you. Not everyone actually has that element in our bodies. So we've got to be careful in that regard. And the energy is important to know. So before any ceremony, breath work or anything, I really emphasize the importance of intentionally opening the door to the subconscious, but then intentionally closing the door to the subconscious. Yes. Because what happens is you're split open and you're now basically wide open for energies to come into you. And there are entities out there who want to come in and suck your life force. And if you're not intentional about this, you may have just thought you did this really great clearing act. And I see this when I guide breath work. I see energy come up out of people's body, and then it wants to find somewhere else. It wants to drop into another place. So we've got to be aware of how our field is operating, and are we protecting ourselves and releasing it? So I love that. And the San Pedro, the down on the ground, it's because you want to get to the heartbeat of Earth, like of Mother Nature. Like you want to get down into her, which is wonderful, and connect to remind you of your incredible heart as well.
Pachamama, baby. It's a beautiful thing. And I'll tell you, there was I was staying at this, it's run by the Myberg family, and they're from South Africa, and they have a place called Another Planet Peru. And it's just this beautiful garden, and has a maloika, like has everything. It's just this, they've been doing it for 34 years, and they're just really well versed at this type of work. And
I just want to touch, sorry, keep going.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to touch quickly on your beautiful description of being with your daughter. Like, I just can't imagine how much that must have been confronting, but also liberating and loving. And where I think psychedelics are great is they can give you that connection to this unseen world. They give you a portal to realize that we are more than our five senses. Our five senses can actually be limiting.
Yes.
If you look at what our senses do, all they operate is on comparison. And comparison is not a great thing. It's like, you know that this tastes good because you're comparing it to something else. It's limited. But we have these other senses. It's that sixth sense. It's that intuitive sense that we don't need to see or hear or anything. We can actually have that knowing that there's a source with us. So in that moment, I love when you said, now I realize that they're always with me. We can take this back. And that's the key lessons we've got to have when we have these experiences, that you don't need to go back into that place to have that experience. She's here with you now. You've now been shown that you can come back and tap into her whenever you want. But other people confuse it and they think that they've got to go back in, and they keep going back into that world. And now you've just lost yourself, and you've just lost yourself to the other world. And that isn't healthy either. You
don't want to get stuck in the astral.
No.
You want to be firmly tethered to the ground and have your anchors and things that can keep you where you need to be, and not get mystified, not fall in love with something that, again, it's just a tool. It's just a learning lesson. It's one of those things where you can utilize it if you're in a good frame of mind. It's not for everybody. But those that are called to it, that are respectful of it, hold it in a regard, and have people that can teach them about it outside of just learning from a podcast. I mean, these things, there's a system to it. Like, it took me a year before I tried my first plant medicine, but I knew I was called to the path. I knew that it was something for me, for all the things that I had been through and the things that I wanted to work on. It was going to be one of the tools in the tool belt that would help me kind of heal. And I had set the intention to be with her months ahead of time. I had set the intention that I was going to spend time with Alana. And I held her until she took her last breath. So she was 7 days old. And it was just this very powerful moment. And I just wanted to be able to rekindle with her and connect with her, because I felt like over the years, it's been some good time now that I've kind of gotten a little distant from her. And so once I sat with San Pedro and had that intuition, or that intention and that heart opening, and then, as things started to progress, I felt her being, her oneness, her love. And she was just basically telling me, Daddy, like, I've never left you. Like, I'm with you. And not even saying these things, just knowing these things. Like, with plant medicines, like, you'll get, people call them downloads. Like, it's not like there's a voice speaking to you. It's like, the best way I can describe it is this. If you've ever seen The Matrix, in the beginning of The Matrix, Neo has become aware of his reality. He's actually in this system that's run by machines, and the world he was living in is a fake world. And it's a lot of parallels to this today, which is strange. But in the first scene of the movie with Morpheus, because it's a kung fu scene, it's cool. He teaches him kung fu. And he wakes up as he gets unplugged, and he woke up and he's like, whoa, I know kung fu. It's the same exact thing with plant medicines. If you are called to do this and you use them, when you utilize plant medicines, you just kind of get these knowings and these things that come to you. And it was one of the most beautiful things. And I can't even give it words or justice. You understand what I'm trying to say here. Like, the experience in itself was so profound that no human words that we have could ever describe how powerful and meaningful it was. And I'll just tell you, brother, it was so beautiful. And the fact that I had that time with her has set my soul ablaze for the rest of my days on earth.
I love you, brother. Feeling you. You don't need to say anything. I felt you just then. That's all you can do. That's really all it is. And that's the challenge. A lot of these times when you come in and have these experiences, it's all like the intellect wants to share and analyze, and it's just don't revert back to those paths. Just have a knowing. Upgrade yourself through knowing. It's powerful.
It is, brother. And I'm so thankful that you understand the journey and that you're on your own path. And I can see, us connecting and doing some stuff together in the future. And I think that, we need more people to deliver a message. We need more people to shine light in the world. We've got a little bit of darkness in the world right now, but there's a pronounced, recircumvention of light, where we've had pandemic, we've had politics, we've had, human rights issues, but like, there's this beautiful resonance that's beating louder and louder. Like, I feel like the warrior spirit and the consciousness awakening is connecting to where, like, people like us and people that are in our circles, our voices are becoming louder. And I think that we need this right now. I think that we're in a time where, this is really going deep into, like, kind of weird conversation, but like, this is a time where we need to recapture the positivity and the love of the world, because it can we're on like a teeter totter. If it goes the wrong way, we could kind of go down the wrong path. And so these conversations, I believe personally, need to happen more often. More people need to hear them.
Yeah. And Eckhart Tolle, who's a teacher of mine, he talks about how consciousness is only expanding. Consciousness is a constant place of rediscovering itself, and it's always expanding. And right now, yes, you could look at all the negativity and the fear and get focused on that. But I want you to be focusing on, if that's coming so strong, why is it? It's because we're actually having the greatest awakening of consciousness ever in history right now. It is rapidly expanding. There's so many people waking up. So it's actually why we're seeing so much pain and suffering is because we're actually paying attention. We're starting to become aware. This stuff has always been there. We're just now expanding, and there's resistance, but there's a dark ages of consciousness in that regard, but there's also a deep awakening. And it's the positivity and the optimism and that love of life, which will stop you being a victim and being the creator and being part of this awakening and this rise of the collective consciousness. So let's be part of it rather let's be part of how we can rediscover ourselves and go to that next frontier of life.
No question. And Eckhart Tolle is one tapped in motherfucker, man. He is,
Oh, yeah.
I don't even know. Has he ever worked with plant medicines? Do you know?
I don't think so. I think he is just a plant.
He is the plant and the medicine and the deliverer of the message, man. His book, A New Earth, man, has profoundly impacted me with things, learning about ego and the pain body and trauma and just consciousness and all these different things. And, you know, there is a reason why these voices are becoming louder. It's because we're becoming more attuned to them. We're becoming more open to them because we are raising awareness and consciousness. And that's one of the flip side of the coin of the beauty of everything we're experiencing is we are more aware of the pain of the world. And we don't have to hold it and let it, negate us or detract us. But, it is one of those things where you have a decision to make. Once you see something, you can't unsee it. You can pretend, you can become ignorant, you can self-medicate. But if you are a warrior of light on the path and you're someone that is called to show up for yourself and other people, you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to put more love and more light into the world and help people as best you can.
Yeah, and we have an adversity to pain. And actually, if you look at it, pain is what enables us to grow. Whenever we come up against ourselves, we have pain. Suffering is self-inflicted. It's a choice. It's becoming a victim. And there's a great Buddhist practice, which actually isn't spoken about that much, but it's called Tonglen. And it's this idea of holding the pain and suffering of someone else and bringing it inside of you. Now, this sounds strange because it's like, why would I want to bring in other people's energy? But if you do it intentionally, you can hold it and then basically convert it with love and release it. And it's a great practice. And I feel like that's where we need to be working from right now, not fighting hate with hate, right, but actually instead taking on the pain and the suffering of that person who's clearly so wounded, got so much trauma that they're acting in that way, and bring it through and recycle it and allow all the divine beings to be part of this with us and release it down into Pachamama. That's an incredible practice. And that's that whole idea of meta meditation, which is proven to be shown one of the most powerful meditations, is have love for yourself, have love for others, and then have love for all and just beam it out of us.
It sounds, the Beatles say it best. All you need is love. It's true. I mean, yes, you have to have a lot of other things, but love really can change so many things. And, with the idea of pain, there's a guy, I don't know if you've ever heard the name Paul Chek, but Paul Chek, he's kind of like one of the forefathers of this term biohacking that people use, like Ben Greenfield and some other folks that are out there, and amazing people. But he's also tapped into the spiritual world as well. And he talks about how pain is a great teacher. And it's one of those things where, just like if you do any kind of working out, let's say weightlifting, for instance, the whole term, no pain, no gain, you can't grow without pain. Mm-hmm. And you don't need to do like Tool came out many years ago, because they are wizards, but Tool came out many years ago with lacrimology, the science of growth through crying and pain. And they made up this whole thing. They made up there was a book that existed. They were really making fun of L. Ron Hubbard and Scientology is what they were doing. But the idea is very real, where you do need growing pains. Think about your body when you grow. A lot of times your knees are sore, your body, you're changing, and sometimes change is pain, but you don't have to become that feeling. It's you're not sad, you just feel sadness. You're not mad, you're feeling anger. Let it flow through you. Let it teach you a lesson if it's there to teach you, and then level up from it. I think that's a beautiful way to look at it.
Mm-hmm. And that's what I wish we were doing with children, is teaching them how to feel and allow these emotions to rise up and then feel them and then release them. If we spent more time in school doing that, we wouldn't be having these world problems. If we actually just taught people how to love, how to have anger, but not associate yourself with anger, not to suppress yourself, release it, then we won't have all these wounded little boys running the world and causing wars and everything right now because they just don't know how to feel emotions.
The divine feminine and women are definitely coming back to the forefront with the age of Aquarius and everything that's going on right now. There's just a lot of beautiful transition back to balance and center and love. And, I'm going to take it back to a plant medicine journey I had. One of my very first ones was very profound and changed my life forever. And it was hard. It wasn't easy. It wasn't like this beautiful ride in the cosmos, seeing my soul's journey, playful, like business insights. No, it was like the first intention I had was to be and receive more love in the world. That was my first intention ever with plant medicines. And to be more love, I had to love myself. And I wasn't loving myself through years of trauma, years of pain. I had stopped loving myself the way that I needed to. It broke me wide open for 2 weeks, man. I was crying. I was in a dark place. But the beautiful part of that was I learned that also it was teaching me how to be a better dad too. Part of the journey was also being a better dad. And in the vein that you're talking about, like teaching young boys and girls, specifically boys, because girls are usually built to feel emotions and emote and learn how to work with them much better than men a lot of times, just because we were taught to stuff them down and man up, don't be a pussy, blah, 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 like all that shit that does not work. And I've experienced that like most any other man. And I had learned that I want to teach my boys, who's 6.5, 4.5, Grayson and William, I want to teach them how to be, like warrior poets, like confident, capable, loving, open, empathetic human beings. And one of the ways that the plant medicine taught me was to show them whenever I was having a tough time. And so for 2 weeks after this plant medicine journey, when they'd put on Disney Plus and put on Moana, I would just start crying my eyes out watching Moana. And they're like, what's wrong, Dad? I would hold them both in my arms lovingly, confidently. And I would tell them why I was crying. And I would say, listen, it is absolutely part of life to have emotion. It's absolutely okay to have them. And you know what? I want you to be able to talk to me about this. And so what we incorporated was the 3 things you know about Daddy. He loves you. He's your best friend and you can always talk to him. And like just reiterating that, hammering it home, because I didn't have that shit. My dad was a heroin addict. He wasn't even there. Like, so it's like the pain, the generational trauma and pain stops here. It's on us to fix it.
I love it. I have 4 siblings and they're all just remarkable. There's 17 years of, in separation between us and we're all very different, but we have this unique connection. And for so long, I was trying to want my family to be something else because of the situation. I was always trying to change them, progress them. And it was just putting up barriers. And then I just went, you know what? I'm going to just start focusing on myself. I'm going to change myself and then just hope that I'll come in with a different energetic field and they'll start feeling that. And I also changed the idea that my family needs to be great right now. I'm going to play the long game. I'm going to play 50 years and let's just do it it's a journey that by my deathbed that we have this level of connection. I started doing this and I started showing up differently and things would just start changing. To fast forward on Saturday night, the 5 of us had our first ever video call. We all hopped on and I just managed to pull it off. They all were open and we jumped on and it was something happened in that moment. Like we glued. And then I went, okay, what tools do you have? Because I've got to make them feel comfortable. I went, well, why don't I just run this like a EO forum where we actually have a safe place and we share feelings? And I invited them and said, look, I've got this idea. Do you want to go down this path? The level of connection that came out of this session was just amazing. We learned about each other. And I just saw that this is the start of the generational healing. Like we have so much trauma in our family and it's going to stop. It's going to stop with this generation. Wow. We're going to work together. And I'm really excited of just spending more time with them. And it was all just this unconditional love. It was, and it's funny, like I actually don't even believe in the state unconditional love. I think our personality has conditions on it all the time, but I just kept connecting at a soul level and the soul doesn't have unconditional love or love. It just has love. That's all the soul operates on. And I started just being there in that place and it's just wonderful. And that was more rewarding than any material achievement I could ever have.
Imagine if 7 billion people did that at least once, just had basically a sharing circle, sitting together, opening up, checking in, how you feeling, where you at, what's going on, showing up for each other, holding space, not even trying to fix anything, just being there to receive. Sometimes people just want to just let it all out and you're a vessel to let it out. And so, it's a beautiful practice that I think we're really becoming more adept, more aware of in this journey of life. And it's powerful, brother. And it's like, as you're talking, I'm thinking about how great that's going to be for future generations in the Kelly family, or if there's other parts of the family, different last names, but there's going to be so much change just from a conversation. And if you can continually, like if you annually, you could do this, or biannually or whatever, it's going to be massive.
And that's the whole idea of stop focusing on changing the world, change yourself, and the world will be changed.
That's right.
We all are connected. We have vibrational connections. My field interacts with your field, which then you go and interact with other people's field, and it has this flow on effect. And that's the difference from the external to the internal. The internal creates the external. The only way out is in. We've got to get in.
That's right.
In.
Stop seeking outward, look inward. What else do you have going on in your world that we want to chat about? Anything, any updates, anything new, exciting, anything you're looking forward to coming up here?
Well, I'm doing something pretty cool right now. I'm writing a book. It's a book that I've been wanting to write for a number of years. I did the Camino as part of my healing process 3.5 years ago, and I got a download while I was there that I have to write this book. And it's going to be about my healing journey from the moment sort of my marriage broke down to when I came out of it. And I had the book ready, but I was like, I'm not ready yet. I've got to go through this process. And then just in the last couple of months, I was like, oh, okay, it's go time. I've got to do it while it's fresh, because afterwards what I'll do is rationalize it and the story will be changed. So I've got to do it in the fresh state. And it's the book I wish was there when I went through this process. It's written from a male, which there's very few books from men on trauma. It's complete exposing, going depth of vulnerability I haven't had. And through it, it's going to be sharing my healing journey. But by reading it, I'm anticipating the reader will go through a healing journey on their own, because it's going to be describing it in a way which you could actually connect with yourself. So I'm super excited. There's going to be a second book, which is the first book's always like my pathway to intentionality, like how I discovered it. And the second book is going to be, here is the intentionality playbook, very similar to Untethered Soul and Surrender Experiment by Mickey Singer, to The Gift and the Choice by Dr. Edith Edgar. That formula, I feel very works well. And it's very cathartic to me. So I've got someone who's helping me like interview me, because I started writing the stories and I just couldn't get to the depth of emotion that I knew, because there's protection there. So I've got someone who's interviewing me to help me get the stories out of me, and then it will make it easy for me to actually write the book, and then also create the story construct, because I don't want it just to be a journal. It needs to be, I have a connection thought through. So it's wild. It's something I've never done before, like this level. I've written a lot, but complete exposing, like a personal memoir. It's going to be liberating. But I know I just, every time I write it and then I come up against myself, I got a message from my younger brother, who we've had a challenging relationship, and he's dealt with trauma in a different way. And I just love him so much. And he just sent me a message out of the blue, and I do not get much communication from him. And it was the most remarkable message, just with basically saying, I just wanted to reach out because I really just appreciate everything you put out there. I've been watching all your videos and they've been helping me. And it's really interesting to see how all your life experiences are coming together in one philosophy. I appreciate your vulnerability. I love you so much, love heart. And in that moment, my heart melted. I was just like, okay, I'm writing the book, not just for myself, I'm writing it for my little brother. And if that's enough, then that's success. I don't care about the millions of people. I hope it helps them, but that's enough for me. And that helps me get away from my ego. And because the ego, when I'm trying to help more people, it actually stops me. It makes me perfectionism, and it stops the creative outlet. So that's been an interesting hack, which I feel like other people can do. So speaking, just if I impact one person, that's good. I don't need to impact all the thousands. It takes the pressure off. And then naturally, if you speak to that person, you generally end up speaking to a lot of people anyway. Yeah.
There's this thing. I used to be in sales a long time ago, and had a sales organization. We do these Top Gun things where there'd be hundreds of people. And one of my mentors was like, don't try to change everyone in the room's mind. Like try to save one person. Like if there's one person, you can help heal one person like that, that'll create ripples in time, because they'll go out and they'll kind of profess the message as well. Right. And so if you can kind of just change that one person instead of thinking I got to change everybody, or impact everybody, I should say. But I heard you say the word vulnerability twice in your conversation there. And, that's something that's divine masculinity at its best. It's, You could be hard, you could be tough, you could be strong, but you know what? Being able to talk about your battle wounds and scars and love and in grace and empathy for yourself, that's a fucking game changer. And I could tell you my personal journey has been completely advanced through the telling of my journey, my bullying, my drug addiction, my dad, like all these different things. And it's allowed all these beautiful things to come into my life, like people that will open up, and it's been healing. It's been healing for me. And then also it's given people permission to tell their story. Like if this guy that does this over here can talk about, he used to stick a needle in his arm for a year, but now he's doing these things and doesn't touch drugs anymore except for psychedelics. There's one of these things where it's like, that message isn't your story. Your story is for other people. And I think being in that divine masculinity of vulnerability is so fucking liberating for you, but it's also so empowering for other people.
It is. I like what you mentioned about the story. I always think every time I share something, I release the grip that story has over me. So it's a liberating act. It's freeing. So there's a difference between vulnerability and oversharing. Like some people have become addicted to just oversharing. They think that's the right thing. But vulnerability is being connected with yourself and releasing and exploring. It's almost like putting it out there to explore, what is the story you've created about this situation? Like, is it even true?
Right.
Is this serving me? How is this limiting me? And by putting it out there, we start being able to become a witness of it rather than living it.
No question, brother. Listen, man, I can't wait to do all the life with you, man, as much as we can, all the stuff we're going to do together. I know we got some stuff coming up on the future that looks like we might be able to connect, but anytime you want to come on this show, brother, you're amazing, mighty, and powerful, man. We'd love to have you again.
Thank you so much. I love it. And thanks for your work, and how I actually shared that someone was describing about your podcast, and it was like, oh, it's going to be a blokey podcast to start with because there's a lot of bros out there, but you actually got my story out there better than most people, which I love, because you're connecting from a heartfelt place. So thank you. It's a great privilege.
Well, I love you, brother. And I'll be the first one from the audience to tell you, thank you for being you. Thank you for coming on the show. And as soon as we get this episode out there, we're going to make sure as many people can hear it. He's the amazing, the mighty, the powerful Finnian Kelly. I'm Jesse T. Be sure to catch us on next week's episode of the Jesse T Show.